Hello, everybody. Welcome to this deep dive info session on the Horizon Europe call on supporting financing of local adaptation actions. I'm Vanessa Bruinhoge and I work in the Secretariat of the EU Adaptation Mission, and I will be taking you through the info session today. Every year, the EU Mission on Adaptation has a number of calls and actions that can be funded. And one of the actions is the one we will be presenting in detail today. The EU Mission on Adaptation is supporting regional and local authorities on their journey to climate resilience. And that is what this action is very much about. Let me take you through the agenda. First, we will have an introduction by our director in DG Klima, Elina Bardram, who is also the mission manager of the EU Adaptation Mission. This will be followed by an introduction by Elina Roine, who is the Deputy Director-General at the European Investment Bank. After that, there will be an explanation of the call and the context, followed by an explanation by CINEA, our executive agency, on the call process, timeline, and the financial support to third-party rules. Then we will have the EIB colleagues with an intervention on the intermediated lending for adaptation from the EIB. And then we will have some time for questions and answers. Now I hand over to our director, Elina Bardram.
Thank you, Vanessa, and I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we do, Elina.
It's very good to be with you today on this occasion of the deep dive and look into how we can best scale up and find financial solutions for bringing together local adaptation solutions and different financial institutional experiences. The context in which we work is very, very important. We now know that for the past 3 years, temperature averages globally have already surpassed 1.5 degrees. So while the scientific thresholds are still considered to be unbroken in terms of 1.5 degrees, reality seems to be outpacing science. In addition, EU, or the European continent, is the fastest heating or fastest warming region in the world. A global temperature increase of 1.5 degrees translates to some 3 degrees within the Union. And this, of course, requires very urgent action. We see the physical evidence that the floods in France and Spain and the very heavy cloudburst rains that we've been experiencing very recently, but also the forest fires and droughts that have come to hamper our economic productivity and crop yields. So the time to prepare is really now. Climate change is not a future or a distant issue. When we do plans for future, we cannot rely on past experiences anymore. Our projective and planning strategies need to become much more anticipatory, taking into account the probabilities of what's coming. Individual public authorities and companies that invest today into resilience and adaptation are protecting their citizen and preparing themselves for business continuity, revenue retention, and also robust and resilient competitiveness base that will be absolutely paramount in the new global reality where we face increasingly hostile regimes. Since financing of climate resilience and adaptation needs to be boosted, the mission, EU Mission for Adaptation, wants to test, in particular, solutions for financing, especially at local level. And we are looking for partners to do this with us, in particular, a consortium to carry out this important action. This pilot action is not only hugely important for regional and local authorities and for the mission work. But we are considering taking this example, the template, up in the integrated framework of climate resilience, which we have been asked to put forward in Q4 of 2026 by the President of the Commission. We will be not working alone. The pilot action, as will be explained today, will be working hand in glove and supported by the European Investment Bank in many different ways, and really would like to take the opportunity to thank the EIB for this. The action has the full support of the Commission, CINEA, our executive agency, and the EIB. I genuinely hope that you will work with us on this much needed pilot that should mobilize financing for local adaptation, and we'll be very interested in carrying this out with you as a consortium. So we hope for many this call will be of interest and that we receive many proposals. I thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Elina. And I hand over the floor to Elina Bardram, Deputy Director-General at the European Investment Bank. Elina Roine.
Thank you very much, Vanessa, and
Good morning, Elina,
for your warm welcome to this exciting event. I will spend 5 more minutes for the scene setting, and we'll talk about 3 things: the EIB's ambition around adaptation finance, and investment in resilience. I will also say a few words about our adaptation plan, and importantly, how this new exciting initiative we are launching here today is complementing our toolbox to tackle the AAA challenge of adaptation finance, namely availability, accessibility, and affordability. So let me start with the statement. Investing in adaptation and resilience is not only a right thing to do, but it is also a smart thing to do. Let me unpack that statement a bit. We are still investing too little, but I think we can look at the glass as half full. We now know that €1 invested in adaptation and resilience will help us to save 6 to 7 euros in costs in damage losses and damages over time. So the business case for adaptation is strengthening as the risk assessment and methods and the data we have access to are improving. The adaptation investment is yielding multiple benefits, and that are becoming more and more visible. Not only those investments are preventing the losses, but they are also helping us to secure future revenues and boost economic growth. And generally, while adaptation investments are having a wider positive societal and environmental effect, and they produce positive outcomes. It is also, and while this is the case, it is also a matter of resilience of our economies and societies at large. We can talk about adaptation and resilience investments protecting us against increasing climate risks in the areas such as energy networks and critical infrastructure, but also those investments are ensuring that our homes, for example, remain insurable, and our food value chain keeps functioning also in case of climate events going forward. Now let me move to say a few words about EIB's adaptation finance and green financing in general. Since 2020, the EIB Group's green financing has grown from less than 30% to over or nearly 60% of our total financing in 2026 and 25, exceeding our target of 50%. The financing of climate adaptation is at the core of our green agenda, and adaptation finance has increased fourfold since 2021, reaching 5 billion in 2025. And now we have set ourselves a new, very ambitious target until the end of the critical decade to finance 30 billion of adaptation investment over that 5-year period. We are going to publish our new adaptation plan, or a reiteration of our adaptation plan this year. And this plan will be aligning with the European Commission's resilience agenda that Elina also mentioned, and also with the Horizon Europe priorities. And this plan will serve for us in EIB as a playbook to further boost and steer our adaptation financing until the end of the critical decade. Now, let me drill a bit deeper into our direction of travel when it comes to the adaptation finance. The core component of the plan will be to boost support for smaller businesses, local authorities, and municipalities. These entities are still investing less in adaptation than larger promoters. When it comes to financing, the actions will center in addressing those 3 A's, namely availability, accessibility, and affordability of financing. Availability for fit-for-purpose funding and financial instrument is crucial in enabling investment in adaptation, and also recognized as a key barrier in investment mobilization. Accessibility. At our recent Green Gateway event that we held here in Luxembourg, we heard from policymakers, financiers, including national promotional banks and insurers, and from our clients that we need to find new solutions to boost investment in adaptation by smaller businesses. And here, the solution should be simple. That is easy to deploy, scale up, and easy to access by the final beneficiaries. And then finally, affordability. To improve that business case for adaptation and to mobilize investment, the financing needs to be affordable. So again, availability, accessibility, and affordability of finance are key to mobilize investment. Now, the blended instruments, one of which we are talking here about to you today, namely combining grants and loans, can be viewed as a promising financial solution that can address that AAA challenge and accelerate smaller scale adaptation investment promoted by cities, municipalities, and SMEs. The blending, as we call it, allows de-risking of projects financing structures, but also therefore supports the bankability of adaptation investments that is oftentimes put in question, and also making these investments therefore more affordable. To create impact with such instruments, again, scalability and simplicity are key. The pilot that we are presenting here again today is a test case for a simpler, scalable blended solution. And the lessons learned, as Elina also mentioned, will inform us all in the future development of such instruments. I will finish by underscoring the importance of collaboration. To innovate in investing and in finance, we need to collaborate. development and deployment of new financial instruments successfully is a joint effort. We are working very closely together, and we can maximize resources for an experience for impact. The pilot is a great example of a collaboration between different actors, public-private, DG Klima, the European Investment Bank, the EU Climate Bank, and financial intermediaries as our partners for deployment. The initiative blends and leverages public funding with EIB lending and aims at mobilizing financing from financial institutions to local adaptation projects. Financing can be complemented by EIB Group advisory support for capacity building, including through our online tools such as the Green Gateway that is also sponsored by the European Commission. We will now hear more about the initiative as the next speakers will drill down to the details. But before I give up the floor, I would like to thank everybody joining today and taking interest of the initiative. And I'm really very much looking forward to our collaboration for scale up and impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elina. And thank you again to the European Investment Bank for the extremely fruitful collaboration, intense collaboration on this pilot. So now I will show you the Slido QR code that you can use to already put in any questions you may have during the info session. We will come back to questions and answers at the end. In the EU Adaptation Mission, we work on overcoming barriers to the financing of adaptation, which is a real challenge, in several ways. One of them is through research and innovation, through projects under Horizon Europe, specifically also on financing. Secondly, we're also trying to work on identifying projects and supporting the regional and local authorities that are in the mission to identify projects and identify financing for their projects. And these two come together in the pilot we are talking about today. So I will take you through the specific call details of the Horizon Europe Work Programme 2026, topic 07, which is the call on supporting the financing of local adaptation by combining public and private financing. Everything that will be said in this info session is, of course, for information purposes, but the information you should only rely on is the one that you find in the call text in the Horizon Europe Work Programme. And for definitive answers, any questions should be put via the Research and Inquiry Service so that you will receive an official answer. What is the call about? We have a budget of 20 million euros available, and we are looking for one project. In this case, at the first stage, we are looking for one consortium to implement this action. The action itself is a coordination and support action with financial support to third parties, which is abbreviated as FSTP later in this info session. What are we looking to achieve with this call and with this action? First of all, it is about bringing together all the actors that are needed to make adaptation projects bankable and financeable. So it is about bringing together local adaptation actors, the financing sector, public grant sector, adaptation experts, and so on, to all work together on specific concrete adaptation projects to make them financeable by combining a public grant with bank loans. This will, of course, also have as an outcome that a number of adaptation actions on the ground, adaptation projects from regional and local authorities at the local level will be financed. And we are also looking to mobilize the national promotional banks and other banks to finance local adaptation actions altogether in a coordinated joint effort. What is the structure of this action? There are two parallel streams of financing that will flow into local innovative adaptation projects. You see at the top the blue arrows, which is the grant funding. If we start from the left, you see that the Horizon call we're talking about right now will provide a grant to a beneficiary consortium. And this consortium, in turn, will then provide sub-grants to several project promoters of local innovative adaptation actions. That is what is being done under Horizon Europe, and that is the grant funding flowing into the adaptation projects. What happens is that in parallel, there will be financial flows from the banking sector into the same projects, in the sense that the EIB will provide intermediated loans to national promotional and other banks for adaptation financing specifically. And the national promotional banks and other banks will then in turn provide a loan for the adaptation projects to the project promoters. Now, what is the link between the two streams of financing? The project promoters should, before applying for the grant, have received a written offer from a bank, conditional upon securing the grant, to finance the local adaptation project or action. And that adaptation project should be in line with the climate action criteria under an EIB intermediated finance contract. This is how the two streams of financing are linked and how we bring together all the stakeholders to work on making these specific projects financeable. Today, we will focus very much on what you see in the blue circle, namely what is in the Horizon call and what is expected from the beneficiary consortium. In the call text for this action, you will see what is expected from the consortium and hence also what the consortium in its proposal should describe. So the consortia that are interested to apply should in their proposal describe how they will implement what is expected of the consortium. Firstly, the consortium should provide the subgrants to the project promoters of local innovative adaptation actions. That is what you have seen in the schedule, in the structure, which is the financial support to third party. So it is passing on the grant that the consortium receives into several subgrants to project promoters. What are the specifics of that grant? At least 70% of the total amount of the action being 20 million, which means 70% means 14 million, should be used for the financial support to third parties. So the consortium should use at least 14 million to pass on in subgrants to project promoters. The consortium should launch its first subgrant call within 10 months. Subgrant calls should be open to any public or private entities. So that means SMEs, local authorities, regional authorities, etc. As we've said before applying for a subgrant, project promoters should have received an offer from a bank to finance the adaptation action, the one and only specific adaptation project they want to carry out, under an EIB intermediated finance contract with respect of the specific criteria that apply for such climate financing. Local adaptation actions that can be receiving a subgrant should have a size between 500,000 and 10 million euros. This size is important because the EU mission on adaptation is really serving regional and local authorities. And we have found that this is a size that typically they would be looking for. The maximum subgrant amount that can be granted to each third party is 800,000 euros. And for the types of activity, so the types of the actions that the project promoters can carry out, the consortium should take into account the activities that qualify as EIB eligible adaptation. The consortium should establish the coordination between the different actors to make the specific adaptation actions financeable. The consortium should consult or involve, it should decide which structure is appropriate for that, the national promotional banks and other banks as stakeholders. And very importantly, the consortium should work very closely together with the EIB. In particular, of course, on the criteria for the local innovative adaptation actions that would qualify for both the grant and for the bank loan under EIB intermediated lending. The second thing the consortium should do, next to the financial support of third parties and the subgrants, is the research and innovation component of assessing what is being done and drawing lessons and recommendations from how, on the ground, these specific projects have been financed via a combination of loans and grants. And in addition, it should learn also from other combinations of loans and grants that have already taken place outside this pilot. So to draw really on experiences that have already been gained before, these experiences should also be drawn in. What does it mean? What does the consortium, what will the consortium be expected to do? To analyze specifically on the basis of the projects that were financed, what were the difficulties in financing the projects in this manner by combining the grant and the bank loan? And how were these difficulties solved in practice? What are the lessons we learned from this? What are good practices? What are the good examples of financing of projects that took place by combining these two funding streams? And very importantly for the future, as Elina Bardram and Elina Roine have emphasized, this is really meant to collect lessons learned and provide recommendations for us for the future. It will be expected to draw such recommendations on all the aspects, on how to successfully combine, what are the appropriate proportions, what are the appropriate conditions, how can we improve this attracting of private financing via the public grant? What does it take to attract private financing, and so on and so forth. Now I hand over to my colleague from CINEA, our executive agency, Frédéric Acou, who will take us through how the call process will work. Frédéric, over to you.
Thank you, Vanessa. As Vanessa mentioned, I work for CINEA, the Climate Infrastructure and Environment Executive Agency, who is responsible for the management of this call, but also for the evaluation, grant preparation, and also the monitoring of the project that will be selected for this topic. I will first briefly highlight the timeline for the proposal submission. So first of all, the deadline to submit proposals is 23rd of September 26, 5 o'clock p.m. Brussels time. We expect to communicate the outcome of the evaluation results to the applicants by January 27. And as soon as the evaluation results have been communicated, we will start the grant agreement preparation with the successful consortium, and we expect to have the grant agreement signed by May 27. Next slide, please. As Vanessa mentioned, this topic requires to provide financial support to third parties. I would like to highlight briefly and summarize which FSTP requirements should be addressed in the proposals. So first of all the topic-specific FSTP requirements, as explained in the call text and already highlighted by Vanessa, should be addressed in the proposals. Second, you should also describe how you intend to provide the FSTP in accordance with the FSTP annex, which is available in the Funding and Tenders portal with the application form, clarifying the types of activity and also the procedures for giving financial support. And third, importantly, please, and you should also take into account specifically all the provisions on FSTP which are set out in the Work Programme General Annex B under the eligibility section. This includes, for example, the requirement to publish widely the open calls, both on the Funding and Tenders portal, but also on the project website of the beneficiaries, ensuring the EU standards on transparency, equal treatment, confidentiality, and also to ensure that the calls remain open for at least 2 months. So please have a look in the general annex and ensure that you comply with all these provisions set out there. Next slide, please. This is a coordination and support action type of action. So for these projects, the proposals will be evaluated and ranked according to 3 evaluation or award criteria, as shown on this slide. The excellence, the impact, and the quality and efficiency of the implementation. Each of these 3 award criteria is divided in 2 sub-criteria. For excellence, there is the clarity and pertinence of the project objectives and the quality of the proposed coordination and/or support measures, including soundness of the methodology. In the impact section, the experts involved will be assessing the credibility of the pathways to achieve the expected outcomes and impacts which are specified in the work program, and also the suitability and quality of the measures to maximize expected outcomes and impacts as set out in the dissemination and exploitation plan that also needs to be provided in the proposal, including communication activities. And third, for the quality and efficiency of the implementation, it will be assessed the quality and effectiveness of the work plan, the assessment of project implementation risks, and appropriateness of the efforts that you have assigned to the different work packages and the resources allocated overall. And last sub-criterion, the capacity and role of each participant in the consortium and the extent to which the consortium as a whole will bring together the necessary expertise. So the application form, which is available on the Funding and Tenders portal, will allow you to address all these 3 criteria. So you are, of course, strongly encouraged to take in mind these award criteria when designing your proposal and to address all the topic aspects which are in the call text, which were highlighted previously, also the specific FSTP requirements, and keeping in mind that proposals will be evaluated based on these 3 criteria. Next slide, please. Finally, I would like to provide you some links to resources where you can find more information and guidance to prepare your proposal. So first of all, there is the EU Funding and Tenders portal where you will need to submit your proposal. You can find all the information there how to do this, including the application form template and technical guidance. Second, there is a lot of information available also on the national contact points websites. Thirdly, when preparing your proposal, have a very close look to the call text, of course, to make sure that you address all the requirements requested in the topic. So we have included the link to the work program for this topic. Then also have a close look at the work program general annexes, as I mentioned already, to take into account the specific provisions for FSTP, but also the admissibility eligibility conditions for proposals. For example, also which entities are eligible to participate, which entities are eligible for EU funding, the consortium eligibility conditions, and also which activities are eligible. And so these are all explained in the general work program annexes. There is also the Horizon Europe program guide, which explains in a more higher level the approach for preparing proposals. I also would like to inform you and point you to an info session that we as CINEA organized in the Horizon Europe Cluster 5 Info Days, where we gave a session on how to implement best practices and some tips for proposal preparation. So there you can find in the slides the link to the PowerPoint and also the recording of the session. And I think this might be useful to have a look, because there we provide some hints how to prepare your proposal and to have the best of success to get funded. And finally, as Vanessa already mentioned, if you would have additional questions after this info session on the topic or on a general level on how to prepare Horizon Europe proposal, please submit them in the Research and Inquiry Service, where you will get a reply in written. And if questions are considered of general concern or could be useful for all applicants, these would also be published as an FAQ on the Funding and Tenders portal on the topic landing page. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frederik, for these very useful practical guidance on how to propose or make the proposals and apply to the call. And now I hand over to our EIB colleague, Desmond Gardner, who works in the intermediated lending department within the EIB. Desmond, over to you.
Thank you, Vanessa, and hello, everybody. I'm pleased to join today's session to support this important initiative. Let me first just say a few words about the EIB in case there are people who are unfamiliar with us. We are the lending arm of the European Union and one of the biggest multilateral financial institutions in the world, also one of the largest providers of climate finance. We were set up under the Treaty of Rome, and our shareholders are the 27 member states. So we're very much part of the EU family of institutions. And as a member of that family, we work closely with our partners, such as the European Commission, on EU policy objectives, including Paris alignment, the Green Deal. And it's in this context that we're supporting this action. The next slide, please. I think we already heard from Elina earlier about EIB's support for green financing. As you said, 57 billion euros was committed to green projects in 2025. And as we use our financing to crowd in investment from other financiers as well, we mobilised around about 190 billion. And we're well on our way to our target of having mobilised €1 trillion by 2030. Next slide, please, Vanessa. And last year, we published phase 2 of our Climate Bank roadmap, which reconfirmed the EIB Group's commitment to financing the green transition and recognised the links between green financing and also the competitiveness, security and energy agendas in the EU. And adaptation is at the heart of that roadmap, with our new target to double adaptation financing to 30 billion by 2030. Shows a recognition of the importance of adaptation to EU member states and the need to mobilise finance to support this sector. We've already heard from colleagues from the Commission on the need to act in this area, and we're pleased to be working in partnership with them to identify new financial solutions for the sector. Next slide, please. And I'd now like briefly to speak about how we believe this action can support adaptation financing in the future. We recently contacted national promotional banks in EU member states to ask about their current support for adaptation. As you can see, nearly all the banks are aware of the need for financing and are working in that area, but less than half are currently seeing an increased demand for financing for adaptation measures. And when we asked why this was the case, common barriers that were identified include the challenge of making projects bankable, because we know that adaptation measures often do not deliver a return to the bottom line. Also, the lack of incentives for promoters and the perception that adaptation projects are higher risk were also mentioned as potential barriers. Next slide, please, Vanessa. And this is where we believe that grants can play an important role. We know from our work in cohesion policy and in other sectors that grants combined with loans can be powerful financing tools to address barriers and accelerate investment. And there are a range of ways in which grants can be deployed, which are shown on the slide, including providing technical assistance, de-risking projects, and improving access and affordability to finance. But it's the third bullet point in this case where we are looking to act, which is to use the grant to meet part of the investment cost, increasing the viability and bankability of the projects. But as the slide shows, the implementation of the grant program will be key. We need simple and efficient processes with standard products that are easy to understand and accessed by the project promoters through their financial intermediaries. And this will be one of the key challenges of the action, to design and implement a workable program. Next slide, please. And yes, as I said, so and the EIB are very happy, therefore, to support this action. As you've already heard, the grant program will work alongside EIB intermediated lending, as eligible beneficiaries will be those projects that have received a loan offer from an EIB financial intermediary. We talk a lot about our multi-beneficiary intermediated loan product, or MBIL for short, which provides loans to banks who then on-lend the resources to multiple beneficiaries for eligible projects. This product allows EIB finance to be channeled to smaller projects, local authorities and SMEs, and through the local banks, utilising those banks' networks, their communication channels and processes to reach the eligible projects. And in addition, alongside our financing, the EIB advisory teams will also be available to support the implementation, working under the InvestEU Advisory Hub mandate. The Green Gateway programme, ADAPT and JASPERS will all be available to support projects at different stages of their life cycle. Next slide, please. And we expect the resources available to support project promoters to continue to develop over the coming year and be available to support projects once we move to implementation of this action. The Green Checker is now a well-established tool. That's the EIB Group Green Checker, used by our intermediaries and also those of the EIF. And the first adaptation module was included in the checker last year, dealing with investments in water stress. And we hope to see further modules being developed this year. In addition, work is ongoing to use publicly available data, create a climate hazard screening tool that will enable climate hazard risks in a particular area to be identified, thus supporting the development of appropriate adaptation projects to mitigate those risks. We expect to see progress in this area over 2026, and it is against this backdrop that we're keen to see the action implemented. We hope to create a virtuous feedback loop where each action will reinforce the other. Next slide, please, Vanessa. So thank you for your attention. Happy to answer any questions that may arise.
Thank you very much, Desmond. Thank you for your support for this action. Thank you for explaining also very clearly in all the different ways in which the EIB is supporting this action, and also the different tools that will become available over time, specifically also for adaptation. So this brings us to the conclusion on the topic, on the action itself. The call is now open. And as Friedrich has explained, the deadline for consortia that are interested to apply is the 23rd of September. We now have time for questions. You can use this QR code to go onto Slido. And then once you are connected, you can insert your questions into Slido. They will then hopefully be received by my colleagues, who will then bring the questions onto the screen. But more importantly, any questions on which you would need a definitive answer, please ask them via the Research and Inquiry Service, because that is the official channel for asking questions, practical and interpretation questions on Horizon Work Programme calls. So please do use this channel to ask any questions you might have already now or later on whilst you are drafting proposals. Please use this channel for all questions you may have. And now I hand over to my colleague for the Slido screen. Fantastic. Excellent. Thank you very much for the Slido. And there we have a number of questions already. I will read the question and then I will see with Desmond and Friedrich who will take the question. So we have the question: in the Horizon Europe call, a consortium will be selected and the consortium will itself then do a subgrant call for adaptation projects. What type of local innovative adaptation projects do these have to be? I can start, and then if you want, Desmond, feel free to come in. So what type of adaptation projects does it need to be? There is no specific limit onto the type of adaptation project. It doesn't limit, it's not limited in terms of the sector. It is not limited in terms of the type of project promoter, because the project promoters could be public entities, private entities. So in that sense, there are no restrictions, but of course, they have to be local and innovative, local in the sense of respecting the size, and innovative in the sense that this is an Horizon Europe requirement that the consortium will then translate into specific requirements. So what type of projects can be there? Well, that will be put forward by the consortium, taking into account also the eligibility criteria for EIB intermediated lending. I see the next question is already there. Who would be the key type actors to include in the consortium in order to gather the necessary expertise? In this consortium that we are looking for, specifically on financing local adaptation, ideally there should, of course, be an entity that is able to do financial support to third parties, so that is able to pass on subgrants, as well as adaptation expertise, as well as obviously financing expertise. So I think these are the three types of expertise that should be present in the consortium. Did you want to add anything, Desmond, to that?
No, well, I think you described it well, Vanessa. I think we do see a financing expertise to be a key part of the consortium. We're very keen to work to help design the actions, and I think making sure that they are aligned with financing that is available through EIB intermediated lending. So, as well as the adaptation expertise, as you said, and the management of the third-party grants as well. I think it's it's a multidisciplinary approach we need.
Thank you very much, Desmond. The next question that has there, is the consortium expected to provide any technical assistance to the projects? The consortium is expected to provide assistance in the sense of coordinating, bringing together all the partners, and doing whatever it can all together to make the action financeable. So technical assistance as such, not in the traditional sense, but yes, of course, any support that is needed to make the project financeable. If you have a more specific question on this, if you have something else in mind with the word technical assistance, please put your question through the Research and Inquiry Service. We'll be very happy to go more specifically into an answer. If you need a definitive answer on this question, please do put it in writing. Thank you. Why do project promoters first have to go to a bank and after that apply for the grant? That's an excellent question, because that's exactly why we are doing this action. The normal way of proceeding with combining a public grant and a bank loan is that a project promoter first applies for the grant, receives the grant, and then is told, now please take your project to a bank and see if you can get some financing for it. But in that situation, it could often be the case that the bank would say, well, this project, as it is, as it ticks all the boxes for the public grant, is not necessarily bankable in my eyes as it is. So this is how, in this action, we want to change the sequencing and do it the other way around. And hopefully by involving the banking sector first to look at the projects, to assess the adaptation, to assess the financial viability, having in mind that a grant would come, so subject to a grant, the bank will look at that situation and work with the project promoter to make it financeable. And then at that stage, the project promoter can apply for the grant. And then in this sense, in this way, it should make the project more suitable for both receiving a grant and a bank loan. The next question is a question for you, Desmond. Do you want to take it?
Yes, thank you, Vanessa. Yeah, the EIB multi-beneficiary loan product is a single loan that the EIB makes to a bank. And then the bank that receives the loan then uses the resources alongside some of its own resources to finance a large number of smaller borrowers. So in this way, a single EIB loan is used to finance multiple beneficiaries, hence the use of the term multi-beneficiary.
Thank you. Next question. Is there a maximum percentage of the adaptation action budget that can be covered by grants? A maximum percentage of the adaptation action budget that can be covered by grants. There is not a maximum percentage that can be covered by grants because, well, we have in the call text some specific requirements that I didn't mention. So you do need to look at the call text for this, I'm afraid. For instance, there is the question of eligible costs, how much can be funded, etc. So yes, I do need to refer you to the call text for the specifics on this, because there are a number of requirements on this. Yes. Next question. Will financial support to third parties allow local NGOs to directly implement community-level adaptation actions? Thank you for the question, because indeed the mission is very much about local community-level adaptation actions. So thank you for that. The question on whether a local NGO can apply for the grant, that will depend on whether the NGO itself is able to take out a loan. So in principle, any public or private entity can be receiving the sub-grant. But of course, the question is whether the specific NGO would be an entity that is able to take out a loan. For that question, I would say to the NGO, do contact when the time comes. I mean, now it's early, but feel free to discuss already with your bank to see if in future you would qualify. The next question, I understand that the EIB provides support, and the question is gone. I wasn't fast enough to read it. The next question is, how will EIB work with the consortium to implement the action? Desmond, I think this is definitely one for you.
Yes, obviously we will. We're very keen to work with the consortium to support the process. We'll work under the control of the European Commission, of course, once the consortium is appointed. And I think we're keen to support the design of the local innovative actions to make sure that the MBIL finance is available to project promoters alongside the grant.
Thank you very much. And then we have a last question. Who shall sign the grant contract with the borrowers, so with the project promoters? Will that be the consortium or CINEA? I am not able to answer that question. I am looking at my colleagues if they want to take the question. Yes?
Sure. Yes, so yep. So CINEA will sign the grant agreement with the consortium for the successful applicants for this call, but it's the consortium that needs to sign the grant contracts with the sub-grantees of the financial support to third parties calls.
Thank you very much, Frederik. I think we are very much on time, which is fantastic. Thank you very much for joining this info session. Thank you very much to the EIB, to CINEA, to all the colleagues that have been working on making this info session happen. And thank you for everybody that will participate in this action. So we hope that by the clarifications today and a little bit more information, we have been able to arouse your interest and your appetite to join us in overcoming the barriers on adaptation financing at the local level. And we very much hope that you will consider making a proposal and putting any questions that you might have, practical, any other questions you might have, please do put them to us via the Research and Inquiry Service. And we look forward to receiving proposals and working with you on this very important action. Thank you very much.